In our world, do tribal factions or social processes continually compete and vie for either attention, results, resources, uh, or supremacy or empowerment? And do these ego processes, tribalized collective ego processes, all tribes is just a collective of egos, one of those bubbles we were just meditating on, do they want to operate the way they have, whether it's out of preference or habit or fear or conditioning or historical referencing or tradition, unresolved wounding? There are many reasons why these bubbles exist, just as each of you exist as a sort of bubble of consciousness that is an evolutionary gestational vessel for your soul. Your karmas feed that process, your experiences feed that process, your free will choice and an individuated soul's creative process feeds that evolutionary bubble, if you will, of identity, whether we call it egoic identity, or if there could be perceived to be a spectrum of very narcissistic or egoified or internally self-centric at one end, and very realized identity of we're all one. Are we making sense? That's a continuity of optional experiential life process that anybody and everybody can operate from their particular point on that spectrum by choice. And no choice is a wrong choice. They will all give us new understandings or wisdom or realizations of self and other and life and world. And that said, the paradox of it is our current collective trajectory as a species is destruction of the environment that we depend upon for our embodied survival. This envisioning process, it says, oh yeah, I'm going to envision us all being billionaires and we all have all the food we want all the time and we get to do whatever we want all the time while we trample nature, kill off every other species, pollute the oceans and the rivers, and make the planet uninhabitable. And so our egoic vision or envisioning dynamics don't tend to take into account in a holistic way the necessity, the benefit of curation or stewardship of either the planet and its species that are operating in the common good, or are being willing to surrender to spirit in service to all sentient beings and spirit as a whole view that can be held simultaneously if we choose. So in our present moment, people would tend to resonate with tribal identities of various kinds for safety reasons, for emotional fulfillment reasons, for connecting, for healing purposes, for empowerment to have what they want egoically, and that is a sort of developmental modality or an ecosystem of ego systems. Did we make sense with that? Those soap bubbles of tribal ego have created a literal ecosystem that's not merely plants and animals physically feeding on each other to live and survive and evolve and procreate. This is an energy feeding dynamic between tribalized ego identities that are vying for superiority or operating from victim, perpetrator, rescuer dynamics, feeling that they're the have-nots or the downtrodden, while the others are seen as the bad people, the the people in power, the man, the current bureaucracy, or the system, or all the system and bureaucracy is just one of those bubbles, by the way, that's just part of the bigger bubble. So if we can recognize that to be true, then we can recognize that's part of the oneness. If we try to make it not part of the oneness, we'll lose our capacity to evolve it because we will disidentify from it, be against it, and thus not be willing to transform it. We can't really evolve and transform something that we're in judgment of, hate, fear, or have a bias or a prejudice towards. So if we recognize and accept that, then we can meet collaboratively and peacefully, and we can suss out, so to speak, individually and collectively, nationally and internationally and culturally, what really can work for the future and what can't. If something is going to, if there's a situation where there are have-not nations that are not getting the support of the international community, so much so that they either economically, politically, or socially collapse or ecologically collapse, we would suggest that there's not enough mature spiritual discipline and care and love and compassion in this collective to look upon them as valid and necessarily supported by the rest of the international community. And that is this trying to see the world through our own individual bubbles instead of seeing it all as one bubble and operating as a unified whole. So right now in social media, how many people would try to resonate from some positionality? And all positionalities, again, are just those bubbles, their belief systems or their perspectives or philosophies or whatever, none better than another, and all necessary and valid in their own way to the degree that they are. And that said, if we don't look at the whole constantly, then each of those focuses, those dramas of the present moment, can take up so much of our vision and our view and our understanding reactively that we go into tunnel vision and judgment and victim, perpetrator, rescuer dynamics, or hatred or fear or disdain of some dimension of the life process that someone else somewhere is either creating or experiencing or delivering into the world, for better or for worse. And if we turn against anything, we can't be for a collective sustainable future that is healthy for us and the environment and future generations. So we're hoping that this communication, as it unfolds in this presentation today, will be seen as a necessary holistic continuity that will be generative of people being able to hold space of consciousness for the entirety of all that is all the time. And it will inform their moment by moment choices. So we'll move from love, care, kindness, service, forgiveness over and over and over and over, and the highest positive intentions, most in alignment with spirit and the common good of every species and sentient being in the world. So that said, that for viewing the world from that perspective, everything becomes transformable, everything becomes healable, everything becomes harmonizable, everything becomes evolvable, everything becomes peaceful and equanimous, and everyone gains by the choice to operate from that vantage point. We wanted to offer, and this is just a working definition, because we would suggest every definition of every word in the world is it's uniquely utilized by every human being. So there isn't some fixed definition that everyone adheres to. If you say the word love to anybody and they wrote down their definition of that word, it would be a different definition than everyone else's definition, because they're seeing it from their soul's eye view, or their ego, or their identity, and their experience, and their karma, and their obscurations, their limitations, or their belief system, or their priorities, or their values, or their goals, or their intentions. So that said, we can have what might be termed operationally functional definitions that we can work from, evolve together, and share. And those definitions, whatever they may be, can empower us to work together as collectives, as long as we're willing to agree on the definition. It's not so different than working from either the metric system or the miles and feet and inches metrics. Those are, do you see that those are just two more bubbles in the big bubble of all that is? So if we say that an optional working definition, just a starting point that we want everyone to contemplate and collaborate on, improvement of, evolvement of, a working definition of conscious transformational leadership, the embodiment of new models and qualities of consciousness that optimally support the fulfillment of the collective common good. And we would add to that, in a sustained and sustainable way. So it's not just the common good for today, it's for the long term.